Today we are going to be ranking all of my favorite MMA moments from the beginning of time when I started watching this sport. I think it was well over a decade at this point. The first one, I don't even remember what the first one was. I'm not going to get into that. Regardless, we're going to be ranking all of my favorite moments. I handpicked a bunch of them, and Tiermaker kind of messed up some images, but hopefully we can still figure out exactly what they are. We're going to get into it in just a second. Before we do, though, I do want to say hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I'm your guy with too many YouTube channels. Let's get started with this list. So, guys, I'm sure at some point I've missed, because I was doing a lot of brainstorming all day on, like, what my favorite moments of all time from MMA are. There's bound to be stuff that I missed, but hey, this is all that I could come up with, to be honest with you. And I think it's about 80 images, which is pretty crazy. And this is, of course, all in my opinion. I would love to know if you agree with any down below. Last thing to note before we get into it is, of course, the rankings here. We have S, 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 A, B, and C, because these are all my favorite moments. Just because something is going into C tier doesn't mean I didn't like it or anything. Of course, these are a combination of all of my favorite moments. So if it's in C tier, that means it just doesn't stack up to the rest over here. Let's get started with an old fight of Robbie Lawler versus Matt Brown. To be honest with you guys, I have a lot of underrated gems on here. I really do. Whether it's going to be fights, moments, people winning titles, things like that. Matt Brown and Robbie Lawler were both at a place in their careers where both guys were so hungry to get to the title, and they did nothing but put on an absolute banger. And this was tearing at my heartstrings a little bit because I was a big fan of both guys. I may move things around at the end of the video, but I'm going to start this one off with a B tier. I really enjoyed that fight. Now, Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler. Oh, man. Oh, my God. This was a wild fight. One of the best fights of all time, honestly. I don't think I've ever watched a fight because I usually, every weekend, watch the fights with my family. My dad and my uncles were the one who got me into UFC at the first place, so I'm always watching with my whole family, either that or some friends. We didn't get to hear a single thing going on in this fight because everybody was screaming so much, and everybody was cheering for Justin Gaethje too, so which was crazy. This was a great fight, but I kind of know what's on this list, and comparing it to everything else I'm going to put in there, I'm going to start this one off with an A tier. It was an amazing fight. Now, speaking of amazing fights, an old one of my oldest favorite, most first fights that really made me fall in love with the sport is Jim Miller versus Joe Lauzon. Two of my favorite fighters ever. I was huge fans of them at the time. Well, I still am. Jim Miller, actually, at the time of recording this video, Jim Miller is fighting on the next card. I'm going to be cheering for him. These are actually two of my favorite fighters of all time. This fight was a banger. This fight was really making me feel something. And that's what I'm going to go by with these rankings, by the way. I don't know if I really mentioned it, but among my favorite moments, what made me the happiest? What made me feel the most? That's kind of how I'm gauging these, not necessarily the fights themselves. What was I feeling in that moment? What was my favorite kind of moment coming from that? So this one I'm going to put right behind Robbie Lawler and Matt Brown. Now, another fight. Oh my God. This is specifically the comeback from behind victory of Alistair Overeem versus Travis Browne. If you guys would remember this fight, Alistair Overeem was dominating Travis Browne. He was absolutely destroying him. I'm talking this fight should have been stopped. Overeem completely got robbed in here. And I like Travis Browne too. I know it's a big thing to clown on Travis Browne, but the dude was an animal before he lost his chin. Well, I mean, did he ever really lose his chin? He lost a step, obviously. He aged and took a lot of damage regardless, okay? The reason why I really love this fight is, first of all, I was a big fan of both guys, right? But my dad was going crazy because my dad was a big Alistair Overeem fan. My dad sorry. I'm sorry. There's going to be a lot of callbacks in this video. My dad was like, oh my God, Travis Browne's done. It's over for Overeem. And I'm like, no, Dad, Travis Browne's, he's pretty good. He has some good power. And then out of nowhere, out of absolutely nowhere, Travis Browne just throws a front kick and knocks Overeem out after the demolition that Overeem put on him. Oh my God, I will never forget that, man. It was such a funny moment. Actually, I'm throwing the comeback from behind victory for Travis Browne against Alistair Overeem into the S tier. That was a really funny moment in my life. Now, oh man, this is the moment that made me a super fan of Alexander Volkanovski, okay? This has got to be SS tier. It has to, right? Not the fight himself with Brian Ortega. The two submissions the guillotine choke, and the triangle choke that Brian Barberena, I was going to say, did I say Brian Barberena? Brian Ortega, regardless. This dude fought right out of it. This is when I was like, dude, Volk is one of the greatest of all times. Volk is a fantastic fighter. This was, I don't even like really, I don't cuss in my YouTube videos, but I don't know what else to say here besides, like, if you're going to say something is badass, what more than Alexander Volkanovski in round 3 versus Brian Ortega? This was one of the most exciting rounds in the history of the sport. SS tier for that for sure. Now, let's talk about Donald Cerrone versus Miles Jury, the end of it, when Donald Cerrone was going crazy, chopping those leg kicks, the hate leg kicks that were behind those. Miles Jury was talking a lot of smack. My dad and I liked watching Cowboy Cerrone back in the day, man. Oh my God, were these some payback hate. Cowboy did not like this dude, but it was just one of those like, oh my God, that's crazy moments. But it doesn't stack up to the rest that I have here, so I'm going to put this one to the C tier for now. Now, Cain Velasquez versus Brock Lesnar. This was really fun. This was a little bit before my time where I started watching UFC, like, religiously like I do right now. But I was always a little bit around it when my dad and my uncles were watching it, right? And I remember sitting down for this fight, and everybody was... I kind of just associated this fight with a really, really good memory because everybody was going crazy. My uncle is a huge fan of Cain Velasquez, and everybody really wanted to see him destroy Brock Lesnar, which he did. So I kind of associate this with a good memory, but of course, like, again, it doesn't stack up, man. I'm going to throw this one in the C tier. Let's keep going to Max Holloway teaching Brian Ortega how to box in the middle of a fight. This is a combination between this being exciting, this being embarrassing, the fight being crazy, Max Holloway putting on one of those fantastic performances, me enjoying Max Holloway as a fighter, I like him, and me really not liking Brian Ortega. So this was kind of like the perfect package of moments for So it was really exciting. I was like, oh my God, Max Holloway's killing him. And then he just goes, oh, hey, by the way, this is how you block, loser. And Brian Ortega just got completely embarrassed. It was a really good moment. I'm going to have this one at the top of C tier so far. That was really, really good. Now, for the big upset, Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz. Oh my God. If anybody else was making this type of video, I guarantee you this would be on it, right? Unless, like, then again, I don't know. Nate Diaz has a lot of haters now. But back in the day, man, no. A lot of people like Nate Diaz. But I watched this. My friend had a big party. So there was a ton of people watching this. And myself and one other guy were the only two that were familiar with what kind of fighter Nate Diaz was. And then we were trying to convince everybody the entire night waiting up for the main event. And they were like, no, Nate Diaz. And I was so sure about this. I didn't care that it was short notice. I was so sure that Nate Diaz would win this fight. I know I didn't bet much back in the day, but I would have bet so much money on Nate Diaz in this fight. And then it happened. Conor McGregor started destroying, but then Nate Diaz did exactly what we expected. It was one of the most craziest moments in the sport when Nate Diaz catches him. Conor McGregor starts getting rocked, and Nate Diaz starts taunting him, beats his head into the submission. Oh my God. And then follows it up with that post-fight interview. Oh, it was one of the greatest moments ever. This is an SS tier, but it's going before Volkanovski. 100%. Yeah, that seems like a proper placement so far. Now, let's talk about an underrated banger. Pedro Munoz versus Jimmy Rivera. This was kind of actually, I will throw it at the top of B tier. Oh, or below A. I might switch that depending on what else we put in B tier. So, for the same reasons that I really love Jim Miller versus Joe Lauzon, it was an amazing fight that not like a ton of people were really paying attention to. But it was, for the hardcore fans, man, that was one for the books. Two of my favorite fighters in the division, two of my favorite fighters in the UFC. I have a lot of favorite fighters, I'm not going to lie to you, but they were going at it. It was really pulling at my heartstrings, and it was just an absolute pleasure to watch. I loved watching these two perform against each other. If you guys have not seen that fight, Pedro Munoz, Jimmy Rivera, it was fantastic. Let's move on, though, to Nate Diaz, rocking Leon Edwards, going crazy. Again, I hope I don't start repeating myself in this video, but I was watching this with my family, and kind of like Gaethje versus Chandler, everybody wanted Nate Diaz to win. And when Diaz actually rocked Edwards and he did everybody started going nuts, but then Nate didn't do anything. It would have been one of the greatest moments in history, just like he did for Conor McGregor, to be honest with you. But this was a little bit of a smaller moment. Where do I want to put this one? I'm going to put it in the C tier, at the top of C tier. Yeah, I enjoyed that more than I did Max Holloway and Brian Ortega. But now, another great fight. Just an absolute technical special. Corey Sandhagen versus Piotr Jan. This was just amazing to watch. The technique that both guys displayed in this fight, the heart that they displayed, cardio they displayed, it was amazing. I loved everything about this fight. But it doesn't make me feel nearly as much, so this one's actually going to go at the bottom of C tier for me. Now, Showtime getting the belt. Anthony Pettis was one of my favorite fighters. Well, yeah, he still kind of is one of my favorite fighters, but I'm talking like when he was active back in the day, right? I was a big fan of him. I went back and watched his WEC fights. He was so exciting, and when he finally beat Benson Henderson, got that belt, I was just so happy for him. Anthony Pettis made me, I loved watching him succeed, no matter what. Anthony Pettis getting the belt, actually, guys, it's going to go in the S tier. I'm going to put it in front of Travis Brown versus Alistair Overeem over here. Excuse me. Let's keep going. Dricus du Plessis versus Darren Till. Now, it wasn't the fact that Dricus du Plessis won. I couldn't really find an image of the first round of the fight. Well, it was mostly in the first round, but the entire time, my mom and I like Darren Till, right? The entire time this fight was going on, my mom and I were screaming at the TV, "Come on, Darren Till! Come on, Darren Till!" Because we knew Darren Till was losing, right? My dad hates Darren Till, so he was going crazy, and he likes du Plessis. Don't get me wrong, I like du Plessis too, but I associate this one with a really good memory too, because you have my mom and I like, "Darren, get up, you can take that, Darren, you take those shots," and then my dad's like, "Yeah, Darren Till's useless." It was so funny, man. And Darren Till soldiered through most of that fight, especially the first round. I couldn't believe the beating that he took. And then Dricus du Plessis gassed out, and Darren Till had a little bit of a comeback. Every single time he landed 1-2, my mom and I were going nuts for him. So that was I really enjoyed that. This is going in the A tier. I'm putting it right in the front of the A tier. Dricus du Plessis versus Darren Till. Now, Colby Covington versus Jorge Masvidal. To be honest with you, it's mostly like the whole thing with them. Trash talk, the fight, Colby just trolling Masvidal. I really enjoy, and I've talked about this on the channel if you happen to follow the channel. I really enjoy Colby Covington's Xbox Live 360 kind of trash talk. So the whole thing of him making fun of Masvidal is really good to me. But it doesn't stack up with all of these moments. So I'm going to put Colby versus Masvidal. Plus, it was really satisfying seeing Masvidal get beat up here by Colby. I'm going to put this behind Leon Edwards and Nate Diaz. Now, this is Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit, I believe, because they're hanging. Yes, it is. I had to really think about that. My apologies, guys. Like I said, tier maker kind of messed with the images a little bit. Now, this was one of the greatest fights of all time. It was an absolute robbery, but I'm talking about specifically the 5th round. You know when 5th round Robbie Lawler gets activated and he starts going nuts? Both of these guys emptied the tank more than any two fighters that I've ever seen. As soon as that bell rang, they both did what they're doing in the picture there, and they just stayed there the entire time. They just stayed there when the fight was over, both of them. The heart that was displayed in this fight was crazy. I'm going to make a video too ranking all my saddest moments, and this will definitely be on there because Carlos Condit got robbed. But man, was that 5th round exciting. It was really, really great. I'm going to put this one actually in front of Gaethje Chandler in the A tier. Really, really enjoyed that. Now, Sean Strickland beating Israel Adesanya. This was great. Long time coming. I don't really like Sean Strickland myself, but Israel Adesanya is one of my most hated fighters personally, so it was just really nice seeing that upset happen. But basing it, like comparing it to the happy moments I feel, the happy moments that I feel for someone's downfall, it doesn't exactly stack up. So this one's going to also go into the C tier. Where am I going to put it, though? I'm going to put it right behind Leon and Nate. If I keep putting everything behind Leon and Nate, I might move this into the B tier. But let's keep going. Another underrated banger is Merab versus Moraes. Now, Merab Dvalishvili gets a lot of hate for being boring. I understand why people think he's boring. I understand why people really, really hate on his style. But this was a banger. Oh my god, was this one of the best fights ever. If you haven't seen Marlon Moraes versus Merab Dvalishvili, you need to go back and watch that fight. Super, super exciting. Where am I going to put this one? I feel like this is going to be the tier of like really awesome fights. It might be, man, because I'm thinking about putting it in the B tier. I'm going to put this one in front of Jim Miller and Joe Lozon. Very, very good fight. Now, Junior Dos Santos knocking out Cain Velasquez. Junior Dos Santos was one of the fighters that I first became a really, really big fan of. So disappointing that he was cheating. But I'm gonna rate these as they were happening. You know, because there's a lot of fighters that really lose respect for him when we find out that they cheat. But I'm just gonna assume, like, I'm gonna make this tier list as if, like, what was I feeling in the moment, right? I was so happy to see this. I was so happy to see this. I was a big fan of Dos Santos. Loved watching him fight. He was a scary guy. But it doesn't stack up. I'm going to put this one actually at the top of C tier. That's where I'm going to put this one. Moving on. Tim Kennedy. This was a really, really good win because he fought Rafael Natal. And it was, I don't remember exactly what it was called, but it was called something along the lines of UFC for the troops. So you had a bunch of troops there in the crowd with Tim Kennedy. And if you know Tim Kennedy, man, this was just a amazing end to his story for him. I was so happy for him to win. He got an amazing performance there, and the crowd was going nuts, man. It was really one of the most wholesome and underrated moments in UFC history. I'm gonna put this one at the bottom of A tier. I really like that, man. Now, Johnny Hendricks finally getting the championship. I was a big fan of Johnny Hendricks. Love Johnny Hendricks. He completely got robbed of GSP, so when he finally got that title, I was just so happy for him. My dad and I were big fans of Johnny Hendricks. We loved his fight style. He was somebody that not a lot of people necessarily cared about because he was a little boring. And it was great to watch him finally win that title. This is an S tier rank for Johnny Hendricks, but where am I going to throw compared to the other two? Top of S tier. Johnny Hendricks, I enjoyed watching get the belt more than I did with Showtime in this moment with Travis Brown. Now, the entire card of UFC, I believe it was UFC 287. I'm not going to spend the time with these guys. I have a couple UFC cards in general here that were just amazing. And I will say, just very briefly, like, most of the fights on this card delivered. And for me, again, I associate with this good memory because we did watch this during a bachelor party for me. It was just a really good time. This whole card pretty much delivered, and oh man, that main event, man. It didn't end on a good note, but I'm just kidding. So I just really enjoyed watching this entire card. Where am I going to put this one? I'm going to put this one at the bottom of A tier. Very good moment. Anyways, Ryan Hall becoming the Ultimate Fighter. I actually was very proud of myself for this because, one, I liked Ryan Hall when he first came into the scene. I never really understood the hate for Ryan Hall. And I actually picked him to win from the very first episode, so I was cheering for him the entire way through Tough, and then when he finally did it, and he fought Artem of all people, I was like, dude, Artem has nothing on this guy, and I just called this entire thing a lot along with being happy and enjoying Ryan Hall. It was just a really good moment. So, Ryan Hall becoming the Ultimate Fighter, again, it just doesn't stack up when comparing it to most things. I'm going to put it, I'm actually going to put this one at the bottom of C tier right now. Now, let's continue on. Justin Gaethje versus Michael Johnson. Oh man, this was one that really shocked me because back when this fight was taking place, I wasn't, don't get me wrong, I was a super fan in the sense that I've watched every single UFC fight, but I am not the super fan that I am at this point in my life because I didn't know the guys coming in the UFC. So I was like a lot of fans, a lot of casual fans, and who's this Justin Gaethje guy that the UFC keeps hyping up? Everybody was talking about Justin Gaethje at the time, but I've never seen him fight. And man, was I pleasantly surprised with this Michael Johnson fight. We were going nuts watching this fight. But it was just one of those like really awesome fights. To be honest with you, I'm actually going to throw this one into the C tier as well. I'm going to throw it right in front of Ryan Hall. Let's move on though. Henry Cejudo getting the title. I'm a big Henry Cejudo fan, man. Big Henry Cejudo fan, and I gave him absolutely no chance against Marlon Moraes. Looking back on that, I don't know, man, because I still think at the time it was a good pick because it was before the big downfall of Marlon. I thought he was a great fighter, huge, powerful. I thought Henry would be undersized. If he went for a takedown, he'd run into a knee, which I don't even remember if it happened, but Marlon, man, he's so good at what he does, and he was really working Henry Cejudo in that fight until he gassed out, and before we kind of figured out that was a huge problem for Marlon Moraes, but I thought it was a good pick. So, I like Henry Cejudo. I was cheering for him, but I was so sure that he was going to lose, so him defying my expectations and him actually starting to get the better of Marlon Moraes throughout this fight, I was going mental. I was going absolutely insane watching this fight. So this is a really good moment. I enjoyed watching Henry Cejudo beat Marlon Moraes. It was crazy to me. I'm throwing this one into the A tier. I'm going to put it right behind Dricus du Plessis. Now, another banger. Another banger, Mark Hunt versus Bigfoot Silva. One of those fights you just watch and everybody's screaming, right? I'm not gonna get too much into that. I feel like this really is going to be the tier of great fights. But no, I don't know. I don't think it's really, I didn't like it as much as all of these. I'm going to put it behind Nate Diaz, but I will need to resize my webcam. Excuse me, guys. Let's keep going to Adesanya versus Pereira 1 in the UFC. This was a combination of me liking Alex Pereira, cheering for Glover Teixeira's gym, disliking Israel Adesanya, and the come from behind victory that Pereira had. My mom also doesn't like Israel Adesanya, so my mom and I were going crazy watching this fight, especially with the come from behind victory. I was like, oh man, yeah, Israel Adesanya is going to coast to a decision. Then, man, Pereira came on. A little bit of an early stoppage in my opinion, but I think he would have went down anyways. This is a really fun moment. Plus, I legitimately do like Alex Pereira, and I enjoyed watching him become champion. So, I'm going to put the finish of Israel Adesanya definitely above the Sean Strickland one because I like Pereira. I don't like Sean Strickland. I'm going to put this one at the bottom of B tier. Now, let's continue on to one of the greatest fights of all time, that being Cub Swanson versus Doo Ho Choi. I'm not going to repeat myself, man. Everybody's watching it. Everybody's screaming. I just don't want to bore you guys. You know, it was one of the most amazing fights of all time, but I actually think I'm going to put it at the level of Gaethje versus Chandler. It was just that nuts. I think I'm going to put it, I'm going to put this one right behind Cejudo Moraes. No, this was a great fight. I'm going to put it behind Duplessis and Till. Now, another card that was great. I don't recall the name, but the card that Jones was supposed to fight on, Cormier versus Johnson, Weidman versus Vitor. This entire card delivered. It was fantastic. I remember that clearly. I just don't remember the number off by heart. But this card, I'm going to put it in the B tier. I'm going to put it right behind Marlon Moraes versus Merab Dvalishvili. Now, let's continue on to Al Iaquinta shocking the world and actually hanging with Khabib Nurmagomedov. I could say a lot of the same things that I was saying with like Duplessis and Till here, where we were all cheering for Al Iaquinta in this fight. I like Khabib myself, but the fact that he was so dominant and going like you know what Khabib did to people, right? But Al Iaquinta stuck around in there on what, like 2 days notice? He came in off the couch, fought Khabib, and actually lasted and was kind of competitive. And everybody's like, come on, Al, hit him, Al. It was kind of like the same thing with Darren Till, to be honest with you. But I'm a big fan of both Khabib and Al Iaquinta. I really liked Al Iaquinta more. I hope he's doing okay selling houses. I actually don't know how that's going for him, but I'm going to put this one into the B tier as well. I'm going to put this one, I'm going to put it right behind Matt Brown versus Robbie Lawler. Let's continue on to another Matt Brown, though. Matt Brown getting back on track, knocking out Diego Sanchez. You can't see it very well in this picture, but I know he was smiling when I was gathering these pictures. Matt Brown getting an insane knockout on Diego Sanchez was just so much fun to watch. Matt Brown's one of my favorite fighters, so it was really good to see him win, but doesn't really stack up. It didn't really matter all that much, the fact that he beat Diego Sanchez, right? So I'm going to actually throw this one. I'm going to throw this one at the top of C tier. I think I liked it more than all of these. Now, Israel Adesanya humiliating Paulo Costa. Okay. I dislike Adesanya, right? But this was funny. It's more funny to me just because when Israel was asked about it, right? I don't even remember if he was asked, but he said this. I just wanted to show him I'm the big dog. So, like, what does this guy do? He humps Paulo Costa. Plus, I won't give away who it was, but somebody that I was watching this card with was a big Paulo Costa fan. Well, like, she was female, and she was attracted to Paulo Costa. So she was always watching what Paulo Costa did, right? I'm just saying, like, again, I don't want to give any names. I don't want to give any hints. So she was also watching with us. And this girl who spent so much time SIMPing over Paulo Costa watched him get humped. So that's kind of like the whole thing that I really enjoyed with Israel Adesanya and Paulo Costa. But at the end of the day, it doesn't stack up to anything else. So this is going to go to the bottom of the C tier. We're going to put Israel Adesanya humping Paulo Costa down there. Now, this was the moment that I became a true fan of MMA. I actually don't know if I told this story before, but I'm not going to tell the entire story. Should I? We're making a long form video. I guess I should. Carlos Condit head kicking George St. Pierre. I'll make this story a long story short. I've definitely watched UFC in my life, but I was a little kid and I came back from playing football. My dad, for some reason, my dad watched a lot of UFC with my uncles, right? My dad, for some reason, I don't know why, maybe they were busy or something, he was watching UFC alone on a laptop in the kitchen. I don't even know where the rest of my family was, but I came back from playing football, and my dad was watching this fight, and he's like, hey, I'm watching this fight, you want to see? And I didn't even, at the time, like I said, I've watched UFC, but I didn't really know the dominance of George St. Pierre. So I sat down, and my dad was glazing GSP of like the amazing fighter that he was and how he was kind of like overriding Carlos Condit a little bit. But then what clicked for me, I don't know why. Maybe it was just the fun I was having with my dad. I was having a good day. I came back home. Carlos Condit landed that head kick. The commentators started going crazy. George St. Pierre looked hurt. Carlos Condit almost won the championship. And this was literally the moment where my love for MMA came about. I started watching and following every single UFC event, every single UFC card. After that moment, I owe becoming a UFC fan to Carlos Condit creating this moment. I look back on this very fondly. I remember exactly what my dad was eating, exactly where he was sitting, and I was a kid. I know it's stupid, man, but I hold this so special in my heart. Carlos Condit head kicking George St. Pierre. SS tier, 100%. Now, Yuri Prochazka versus Glover Teixeira. One of the greatest fights of all time. It is, man, this is tough. We spent the entire time, I'm a big fan of Yuri Prochazka, but my family and I were big fans of Glover, and we were cheering for him this whole time. This is one of the most back and forth fights I've ever seen, and we were going nuts watching this fight. This is S tier for sure. S tier, Glover versus Jiri. I've never been so invested in a fight. I'm sure there's another one on here that I have been in, but man, that was crazy. Actually, I'm going to throw this one in the SS tier just because, again, we were cheering for Glover so much for that fight. And when he was having the success, when this dude was over 40 years old, what was he, like 42 in this fight? Constantly just going, I'll beat him. And then no matter what Yuri did to him, this dude came out on top, of course, until the end of the fight. But man, was that good. I'm actually going to throw this one in front of McGregor versus Diaz. One of the best times I've ever had in this sport was watching Yuri Prochazka versus Glover Teixeira. Now, let's talk about a walkout. Darren Till walking out to Sweet Caroline, getting the fans behind him. Too bad he got knocked out, but still, this was one of these special UFC moments, and I like Darren Till a lot. I do. Coming out, embracing the fans. It was just one of those really wholesome UFC moments. I'm going to throw this one at the top of C tier. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Now, Joe Lozon knocking out Diego Sanchez. Joe Lozon getting back on track in the UFC. Joe Lozon's one of my favorite fighters. Got a really nice finish against Diego Sanchez at UFC 200. It was a great time. I really enjoyed watching that. So I kind of carried at the same time that I do with Matt Brown because it's kind of like the exact same situation. I'm going to throw them together. But I do like Matt Brown a little bit more than I like Joe Lozon. I'm big fans of both guys. Now, TJ Dillashaw finishing Cody Garbrandt. TJ Dillashaw, I'm going to get into another moment later on, guys, with TJ Dillashaw, but long story short, TJ Dillashaw was one of my favorite fighters in the history of the sport. So, him finishing Cody Garbrandt, I do not like Mr. Hanging with the Boys. Yeah, this was just really nice to see. But it doesn't stack up. I'm going to throw this one into the C tier as well. I'm going to throw it right behind Nate Diaz. Yeah, that seems right. That seems about right. I just switched it for Bigfoot. Let's move on, though. Tyron Woodley versus Vicente Luque. This is just one where we were laughing a lot watching this fight because when, there's that moment in the fight, I wish I could play it for you, but the UFC is definitely going to copyright, where Vicente Luque clocks him, and then Woodley starts going around the octagon like, whoa. And then we were just really laughing at it. Plus, I don't like Woodley. I like Vicente Luque. It was a really fun time watching that. So, I'm going to throw this one in the C tier as well, but nothing special about this one. I'm going to throw it behind Holloway. Yeah, that's about right. Now, another funny moment is Johnny Walker with the ghost knockout. Jamal Hill hits him and whoa. Whoa. My dog was just looking at me for a second. That was just really funny. We replayed this so many times. We rewound it. It was just, we didn't stop watching it. The highlights were great. But this one, it doesn't mean much. It was just something funny that happened. I'm actually going to put this one at the bottom of the list. It was still really good, though. Let's continue on to which fight is... Oh, is this Frank Mir versus Andrei Arlovsky? I believe that is Frank Mir. Sorry, the picture's a little bit small for me. So, this was one of the moments that in the UFC that I was going, like, crazy anticipating this fight, because at the time, both Frank Mir and Andrei Arlovsky kind of just had this career resurgence, right? And the UFC was advertising that as well. The countdown shows was, oh man, it was so well done. I actually would go back to watch that, to be honest with you, because both guys all of a sudden out of nowhere, they started winning again. They were on this collision course and they actually collided. I was on vacation in Toronto and I could not miss this fight. I just couldn't. So, and it delivered. It was a great time, great fight to watch. Where do I want to throw this one? Oh man. I'm going to throw this one at the bottom of A tier, actually. I feel like that's proper. Let's continue on, though. Cub Swanson versus Jeremy Stephens. This fight wasn't like a crazy fight. It was really good, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't stack up to like a Glover versus Yuri or a Doohoo Choi versus, Cub Swanson. But man, this is one of the fights that really made me a huge fan of Cub Swanson. I went back again, like watched the fights that I haven't seen, especially from the WEC too. Cub Swanson's such a fun fighter, man. Been following his career ever since, and this is a really standout performance. For some reason, I don't know why, I enjoyed this, and I was by myself. I just remember watching this fight in the basement. Both my family and friends must have been busy then, so I was chilling back by myself, watching Cub Swanson have an amazing performance against Jeremy Stephens in an exciting fight, and I still enjoyed it. You know, it's a good fight when you're watching it by yourself and you still enjoy it, right? Where am I going to put this one? This one's really tough. I'm actually going to throw this one. I'm going to throw this one in front. I'm going to throw this one at the top of B tier. Yeah, that feels right. Now, Figueiredo versus Moreno 1. Talk about a fight that nobody expected. Well, I don't know, actually. I don't think any expected this to be one of the best fights ever. I don't remember what the main event was for this card, but we were all obviously waiting for the main event, and we kind of... I didn't want to skip over the fight, but I did not care about it at all. And this fight ended up being one of those fights that was just will go down forever and one of the greatest fights to ever come about. It was fantastic. Both fighters, I've become a fan ever since then, and don't get me wrong, I've been familiar with the fighters before that, but it was just crazy watching those two go at it and ended in a draw. Crazy fight. Figueiredo versus Moreno, actually, guys, I'm going to throw it into the S tier. I'm going to throw it... Actually, that's tough. That is tough. I'm going to put it in front of Overeem versus Travis Brown. Let's continue on, though. The greatest fight of all time. Dan Henderson versus Shogun. This is my favorite fight ever. My favorite fight ever. If you haven't seen it, and it's important to specify, Dan Henderson versus Shogun Rua 1. It was just the most back and forth, chaotic, violent fight you'll ever see. It's great. But I didn't care about both guys that much. That's the thing. I'm going to put this one into the A tier. I'm going to put it right in front. No. I'm going to put it behind Henry Cejudo. That's where I'm going to put that. That's proper. Now, this is actually the inspiration for making this video. The Korean Zombie's retirement. Man, if you want to talk about things that actually make... This legitimately makes me emotional every single time I see it. Just the way the crowd embraced this guy. The guy went out on his shield, had a hat, like, he got knocked out and had the happiest retirement ever. Him walking out of the cage, them playing Zombie, singing Zombie, Zombie. Like, that was the perfect, one of the most wholesome moments in MMA history. Every single time I watch that, I legitimately, like, want to tear up for the guy. It was so beautiful. The way the fans showed him respect. That's how Glover should have went out, man. It's really disappointing. This is absolutely an SS tier moment. I'm tempted to put it at the top. I'm tempted to put it at the top. I'm going to put it behind Carlos Condit. I don't know if any... Oh, no, I don't know, man. I don't know. This SS tier is tough. It's... but then again, I was going crazy watching Jiri versus Glover. Oh... I'm going to put it... These could be anywhere, guys, to be honest with you. I'm going to put it in third place for now. Now, Michael Bisping becoming champion. Knocking out Luke Rockhold. So good. I am a fan of Michael Bisping, and I also disliked Luke Rockhold. Funny story about this one is I was watching this card, right? We were waiting for Michael Bisping. Michael Bisping took the fight on short notice. We all know that, right? And Luke Rockhold was supposed to kill this guy just like he did in the first time when they fought. And my dad actually got up and said, this is such a mismatch. I don't even care to see it. He went downstairs. He just took a bathroom break. And then everybody started screaming because Luke Rockhold's head was bouncing around like a pinball machine, as Bisping said. I couldn't believe he won this fight. I wanted him to win so bad. And left hook Larry actually pulled it off. And my dad actually came upstairs. He's like, I actually missed that. Michael Bisping won. And we're like, yeah, Michael Bisping actually pulled it off. He couldn't believe it. So we still talk about that sometimes, man. Michael Bisping. That's so funny. All right. This is going to be an S tier. Michael Bisping becoming champion. I'm going to put it actually... I'm going to put it in front of Johnny Hendricks. Michael Bisping becoming champion was fantastic. Now, let's talk. I guess this is all the champions here. I'll mix and sort them up a little bit because that's what I feel like that's going to be better that way. My apologies, everybody. Just a second. Anyways, who is this? Oh, Henry Cejudo. The hair cutting off really made me... Henry Cejudo becoming champion. People claim that this fight was a robbery. I don't think it was a robbery. Wait, was this the Frank Mir card? The Frank Mir and Andrei Arlovsky? I think it was. Regardless, this was a fantastic fight in itself, and I'm a big fan of Mighty Mouse, but I really wanted Henry Cejudo to actually capture that gold after being the king of cringe, the Olympic gold champion. He could get a UFC belt under him too, and it was just a really, really nice moment to see. He won such a close fight, and I thought it was well-deserved in my opinion, so this one was really cool to see. But, I don't know, like... I'm not as big of a Henry Cejudo fan as I am like a Johnny Hendricks or an Anthony Pettis. But I'm a big fan of Henry Cejudo. So I'm going to throw this one behind the gatekeeper, Nate Diaz versus Leon Edwards. Anyways, let's continue on. Oh my God, Volk with another badass moment. Volkanovski actually putting it to Islam Makhachev. Actually really going in there and having the moment where he was screaming, beating him up on the ground. The 5th round when he knocked him down. Volkanovski, the later rounds with Islam Makhachev was fantastic to watch. This is an S tier moment. But where are we putting this in the S tier? I'm going to put it behind Michael Bisping. That was an insane moment. Now, let's talk about the Go Big press conference. The Go Big press conference is something that I really wish the UFC still did. I don't know why they don't do it anymore. The views for it would have skyrocketed. They could have McGregor on it. Oh, they need to do this again, man. The big press conferences with all the fighters coming in. They did it a little bit with Sean Strickland, but like it's not the same. They had like everybody on the cards there. This was probably the greatest press conference in UFC history. So I loved watching every minute of it. And honestly, every once in a blue moon, I'll go back and watch it. This whole press conference was an S tier moment. I'm going to put it, actually... I'm going to put it right behind Anthony Pettis. The Go Big press conference was fantastic. Now, UFC 189 McGregor vs. Mendes, one of the greatest cards of all time. The entire card, top to bottom, was nothing but excitement. S tier for sure. The whole card, but I almost didn't include some cards on here, some of my favorite cards, because how can you compare some of these? But this was one of the greatest nights ever. This was one of the greatest fight cards ever. Every single fight, just about every single fight delivered. I'm going to put Mendes versus McGregor into the S tier. Great card. Absolutely great card. Now, Jan Blachowicz becoming champion. It's too bad that I never really got to know Jan Blachowicz, or nobody, I guess most MMA fans kind of feel the same way. So many people really like Jan Blachowicz as a person since he became champion, and I started liking him just a little bit before that, and it was really, really nice to see because Jan's just a regular, seems like a really, really good dude, you know? So, like Glover, man, I'm just happy for Jan Blachowicz. I was happy to see him win the title. It was well-deserved, and I think he is a great and respectable champion, a great respectable fighter. Big fan of Jan Blachowicz. So I was really happy to see him win. So I'm going to put this one into the S tier too. Jan Blachowicz becoming champion. I'm going to put that right behind. Yeah, that's about right. That's about right. Let's continue on. I didn't know who this was until I saw UFC 199. I remember this one. This was the press conference for Rockhold versus Bisping. One of the funniest press conferences ever. Not as good as the Go Big press conference, but Michael Bisping just completely dunking on Luke Rockhold. Conceive, believe, achieve. Shut the hell up. You know what I mean? It was so good. So good. So funny. Again, every once in a while, I will actually go back and watch that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't stack up the way everything else stacks up here. So I'm going to put this one into the B tier. Do I want to put it in front of the fights? I'm going to put it in front of Matt Brown versus Robbie Lawler. Let's continue on, though. This is specifically the stare down between Yuri Prochazka and Alex Pereira. This is one of the craziest, most tense moments in UFC history. There were a lot of good stare downs, but oh my god, was this a good one. Guys, I'm not even lying to you. I want to throw this in SS. Just the tension that we were feeling there. Yeah, I'm throwing it at the bottom of SS, though. The tension. No, man. I was feeling more than I was. No, I don't know. Alexander Volkanovski. This whole SS row is so close, man. I'm putting it in front. Just the fact of watching these two for so long, just staring at across the cage from each other, was insane. You know what I just realized I forgot about? I was thinking, and one of the greatest moments ever was Darren Till and Hamza Chimaev on the cage. Too bad I didn't put that in there. But anyways, UFC 205, I believe this is. The McGregor vs. Alvarez card, just like 189, one of the greatest cards ever. Every fight delivered. I think I should put them together, to be honest with you, because those cards were so close together, and every fight on there pretty much delivered. But which was better? It was so close, man. But I think 189 tops it just a little bit. I'm going to also throw this into the S tier. Great event. Next up, Mark Munoz retiring. This is a very, very old moment at this point, but this is one of the low-key, really great retirements. I like the fact that the crowd was embracing him so much, and it's so weird because John Anik, you can see in the picture a little bit he had hair if it was that long ago, but still, he left his gloves in the octagon, went out very well, he had his moment, he thanked everybody, the crowd thanked him back. It was just a really, really nice moment. This is an A tier moment. I'm actually going to throw it at the top of A tier. Mark Munoz retiring. Let's continue on to Chris Weidman versus Anderson Silva. Oh man. Guys, you have no idea the hell that I went through the 2 weeks in the build up for this fight, because I was watching Chris Weidman when he came to the UFC, and I legitimately thought that he could beat Anderson Silva. I will die on this hill today that Anderson Silva only started clowning because he knew he had nothing for Weidman. I will die on that hill. Argue with me all you want. I was arguing at school with my friends for 2 weeks, maybe more. Everybody was laughing at me. As if Chris Weidman had a chance against Anderson Silva. And then we all watched it together. It was like a beach house or something. We went on vacation. We were all sitting down at like this little tiny laptop watching it together. And I never rubbed a win in so many people's faces so hard in my life. I was like, I told you I was going crazy for this. So this was a moment for me in my UFC fan career. I'm going to put Chris Weidman. Plus, I really like Chris Weidman. But I'm going to throw this one into the A tier. Where do I want to throw this one? I'm going to throw it in front of Henry Cejudo and Marlon Moraes. Great time there. Now, Colby Covington's walkout. The one where everybody's chanting, "You suck, you suck." Dun 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 dun. This is a great moment, but it doesn't stack up to anything. So it was just a really cool walkout. I love Colby Covington's music. Where am I going to throw this one? I'm gonna throw it into the C tier. Actually, I kind of want not with Darren Till. It wasn't that good. I'm going to put this one all the way somewhere near the bottom. Actually, I'm going to throw it in front of Cowboy with Jury. Excuse me, just want to take a little bit of a drink there. Now, I think it's time to talk about TJ Dillashaw. Renan Barão. I've talked about it on the channel before, guys. I was so disappointed in TJ Dillashaw because TJ Dillashaw is the fighter that I modeled my fight style after. He was an inspiration to me, and I did nothing but cheer for him and Dwayne. Nothing against Dwayne. He's still fantastic, but I mean, I like it like Johnny Hendricks, man. It sucks when you support somebody for so long and then find out they were a huge cheater. TJ Dillashaw. I'm not saying don't get me wrong. I don't know, man. I was just a really big fan of TJ Dillashaw. Again, it hurts still to this day. I modeled my fight style after TJ Dillashaw. I studied his combinations. I studied his footwork, and it worked out for me really well. But So the fact, and I did that after I watched his performance with Renan Barão because nobody really knew who TJ Dillashaw was. Nobody really cared who TJ Dillashaw was. I was watching it in this little rental home my friend had while he was moving, and we were kind of just watching it because UFC was on, and we're like, oh yeah, Barão's just going to destroy this guy. But then we hear Joe Rogan, like, the whole time, man, TJ Dillashaw knocked him down to the right hand in the first round, danced around for 5 rounds. TJ Dillashaw is dominating one of the greatest pound-for-pound fighters of all time. The commentators were going nuts. We were going nuts. I was completely blown away by this performance, and TJ Dillashaw was the reason after this fight that I changed the way that I approached Muay Thai and kickboxing. Huge inspiration to me. Huge moment for TJ Dillashaw. He's right up there with Carlos Condit. Ooh, this is tough. I'm going to throw this in front of Carlos Condit. These are the two most important in my life. This made me a super fan of MMA. This birthed the style that I used in MMA. And I was just happy to see that underdog story win. It was really, really cool to watch, man. But let's continue on. The greatest fight night card of all time, Dos Anjos versus Cowboy. I think it was a UFC on Fox card. And it had Nate Diaz versus Michael Johnson. It was just amazing. This whole card, I remember it clear as day. Do I want to throw it in the S tier with the other ones? I think I have to because these cards were so good. I don't know. Oh, yeah. It was just as good, man. It was just as good. You know what? For this one, I'm going to read off the card for you guys just so you get the craziness that this card was. I know I said I wouldn't do this, but I want to, especially for a fight night card. The very first fight on the early prelims was Francis Ngannou taking on Luis Henrique. Kamaru Usman also on the early prelims taking on Leon Edwards. Oh no, I just clicked off of it. Excuse me, guys. Then we have Valentina Shevchenko versus Sarah Kaufman, CB Dollaway versus Nate Marquardt, Charles Oliveira versus Miles Jury. That's all the prelims. Let's continue on to the main card. The stinker between Randa Marcos and Karolina Kowalkiewicz, but I do like Karolina. I'm a big fan of her. Then Nate Diaz versus Michael Johnson, Alistair Overeem versus Junior Dos Santos, and Rafael Dos Anjos versus Cowboy Cerrone. It was fantastic. I'm throwing it into the S tier. Anyways, next up is Charles Oliveira winning the belt. This actually, seeing him get so emotional winning the belt, it almost made me emotional too, because him actually winning after all the adversity that he put into his UFC career, running around in the cage, crying, doing this with the belt like it was on him. It was such a wholesome moment. You know what's funny is my mom's like, he's going to sleep with that belt tonight. Oh, she was happy for him too. And then he uploaded a picture on Instagram of him sleeping with the belt, and I couldn't wait to show her. It was so funny. So this is an SS tier, Charles Oliveira becoming champion. I'm going to put it, I'm going to put this moment in front of Yuri and Alex Pereira. That's right. That's a proper spot for it. Let's continue on, though. Brandon Moreno becoming champion. There was something actually, you can compare it a lot to Charles Oliveira's story because the same kind of thing happened. He had the ups and downs. Brandon Moreno was cut. You have that old clip from Brandon Moreno. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. And then he said he'd become champion. And then he actually became champion. After the war that he had with Figgy raising him up, giving him praise, what's crazy is he won the fight and it didn't sink in. I think it was Joe Rogan that said that, but it's completely accurate. So because he won the fight and then he was looking out at the crowd like this, and then he just started crying. Very, very wholesome. I enjoyed that moment. I'm tempted to throw it in the SS tier. And I'm going to. I'm going to leave that there, though, because I'm not nearly as big of a fan as Brandon Moreno than I am Charles Oliveira. Just crazy. Now, next up is Paddy Pimblett's big walkout before everybody started hating him. This honestly is nothing special. I was just having fun with my mom. We were both going along to the crowd. Oh, Paddy the baddie. Oh, Paddy the baddie. But it was fun. I still like Paddy Pimblett. Everybody seems to really hate Paddy Pimblett, but I think he's really fun. I'm going to throw this one. I'm going to put it, actually, I'm going to throw it up there with Darren Till, except, yeah, Darren Till was a little bit better. Next up, Chael Sonnen versus Shogun Rua. Chael Sonnen getting the win over Shogun after having such problems in his career. Chael Sonnen is probably my favorite fighter ever, or one of my favorite fighters ever, along with Carlos Condit, Glover Teixeira, a couple other guys, right? Chael lost a few fights, and he was really losing a step, and the MMA community was kind of not turning on him, but kind of like, oh yeah, Chael was never that good. So he really needed this win. He got the win and cut that amazing promo. Vanderlei Silva, I didn't know they could stack crap that high. You know, he made it exciting. It was great. I was emotional as a fan, like watching him, and I wanted him to win so bad after the adversity that he went through in his career. This is an SS tier moment, 100%. This whole row's so tough, man. So tough. I'm going to put this right behind Charles Oliveira. That's where I'm going to... No, I'm going to put in... This whole row, man. It's crazy. That seems proper to me. I'm going to leave it there. Oh, no, I just realized I need to fix my face cam. Apologies, guys. Jesus, everything's getting smaller. Sorry, I hope this is still very interesting for you guys to watch. Anyways, next up is Glover Teixeira becoming champion. I didn't mix this up nearly as much as I thought I wanted to. So, long story short, like I mentioned earlier in the video, Glover Teixeira is a big fan favorite. Big fan favorite. I've been a fan of Glover before it was cool to be a fan of Glover, and I am very proud of that because I've just really liked the guy, man. Like I was talking about with Jan Blachowicz, it's everything multiplied by 1,000. Glover just seems like an amazing guy, and the fact that he actually did it at the age that he did it is unheard of, right? Everybody was counting him out, and there was a point in his career where I looked at my dad, because I always pick against the 40-year-old fighters, right? I looked at him, I'm like, I'm not going to pick against Glover anymore. He just keeps winning, and then my dad was like, yeah, I'm kind of with you on that now. And so we still continued to cheer for Glover Teixeira and really liked him as a guy. I wholeheartedly believe he's a good person. Glover Teixeira becoming champion is an SS tier moment. I was so happy. I'm going to put it... I'm going to put this in front of Yuri Prochazka and Glover Teixeira. The fact to become champion made me happier than I did watching this fight because it had a set ending, but I was going crazy for that. Amazing. Amazing. Next up, really funny interview. Dominic Cruz versus Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt talking about chasing box on wheels, and then Dominic Cruz was like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And it was just, it's one of those that's really fun to look back on, but nothing special, right? Got our little bit of funny moments over in D tier, and then we have the funny moment of Travis Brown sitting over at S tier. It's just so funny to me, man. So sometimes I go back and watch that, but it's nothing crazy. Nothing crazy. I'm going to throw this. I'm going to throw this in front of Adesanya and Strickland. Let's move on to another interview, that being Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz. Nate can only count to 5. Count to 10 if you can, Nate. It was so funny. Great interview. Great time. Nate Diaz was getting so pissed off at him. I'm going to throw this behind Junior Dos Santos. It was really funny. Next up, Daniel Cormier succeeding in becoming double champion, actually knocking out Stipe Miocic. Very good moment. I'm a big fan of DC. I really wanted to see him win the second belt, and he actually did it. Cut an awesome promo, which is a little bit cringy, but I thought it was really fun. I wasn't sure if he was going to do it, and he actually ended up doing it. I was cheering for him. I love it. My mom and I are big fans of Daniel Cormier, so I loved seeing him become the heavyweight champion, especially the shape that he's in. It's crazy that he's able to do that. This is an A-tier moment. A-tier moment. Where do I want to throw this? Guys, I'm actually going to throw this at the top of A-tier. Top of A-tier. That seems pretty proper for me. Next up, Joanna Jędrzejczyk becoming champion. I really liked her when she came onto the scene. She seemed like this wholesome girl, just like, and again, and again, and again, and still. Like, it was just, she put a smile on your face watching her, you know? Now, we just look at Colby calling her the booby woman. So, her becoming champion, defeating Carla Esparza was a really, really wholesome moment. I enjoyed watching. I remember exactly. You know what's funny is, tell me in the comments if you agree with, or like have the same thing as me. There's a lot of these fights that you remember exactly what you were doing, exactly what you were eating, exactly who you were watching the fights were, whose party you were at, you know? I don't know. And it's just one of those moments. I had a really good night watching that card of Joanna. Dos Anjos versus Pettis is on that card too. It was really, really fun. I'm tempted. Guys, you know what? I'm actually going to throw this at the bottom of S tier. I really enjoyed watching her become champion. Next up, Showtime upsetting Wonderboy. This was shocking. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, huge Anthony Pettis fan. Everybody was counting him out. Didn't make sense. Him going up in weight, fighting a striker that is pretty well in every way superior to him. Yeah, this was a great watch. The Superman punch KO. Classic Showtime style. Knocking out Wonderboy. Wonderboy took it so well too. This was awesome. I'm going to throw this into the B tier. I'm going to throw it in front of the Bisping press conference. Next up, UFC 181, another great card. But I will say, while this card did definitely deliver, it didn't deliver the way these three delivered. Oh, I'm actually going to throw this one right with the Pereira and Burns card, except it was a better card than that, so I'm going to throw it in front. I feel like that's appropriate, but then again, yeah, that seems right. Next up, Dominic Cruz talking to TJ Dillashaw. This is a good interview. This is a really funny moment and still lives rent-free in my head to this day. You can't be done talking to me. Or TJ Dillashaw. All right, man. I'm done talking to you now. Well, you can't be done talking to me. You're right here facing me, dummy. You gotta talk to me. It's just so funny. My brother and I quote this all the time. This moment lives in my head. My brother and I say this to each other all the time. It was really funny. Cruz talking circles around him. But it doesn't make me feel like the other ones do, right? So I'm going to throw this one. Was it better than Connor and Nate? Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to put it right in front there. Next up, Junior Dos Santos. Who is Junior Dos Santos fighting in this? Frank Mir. Frank Mir. I had to really think about that. I'm a big fan of Frank Mir. And I think we have Frank Mir losing twice in here somewhere. Regardless, at the time, I was just a big Junior Dos Santos fan. One of the first fighters that I really became a hardcore fan of. So I was really enjoying watching him win. And it was just really cool seeing. I didn't want to see him lose his title, and he had an amazing performance against Frank Mir. That's all there is to it. It's so weird, but I hold this fight special in my heart, man. And the thing is, I love Frank Mir. Really, I do. Like, I enjoyed watching this fight. I'm going to throw Junior Dos Santos versus Frank Mir right in front of Joe Lozon, Jim Miller. Great time. Next up, Charles Oliveira. Hello, Vancouver! Okay, if you guys have seen, this is another thing that I kind of just lives in my head, right? First of all, I was sad that he finished Beneil Dariush, right? Beneil's one of my favorite fighters ever. But the fact that this is all over my TikTok, by the way, still to this day. When he goes, hello, Vancouver! Hi! You guys need to go back and watch that to see what I'm talking about, because there's a lot that you would miss until it was pointed out to me in a TikTok that he says hi. Hello, Vancouver! Hi! It's just really funny to me. I don't know why. I'm going to put this at the top of C tier. I really am. Next up, another amazing card. The entirety of UFC, but I don't remember the number of the card. My apologies. If you can see here, you have Islam Makhachev. You have Hamzat Chimaev. You have Aljamain Sterling, Piotr Jan, Glover Teixeira versus Jan Blachowicz. Glover became champion. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Do I want to throw it with the other cards, though? I feel like I have to, man, but it doesn't feel right putting all of these together. It just doesn't feel right, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Sorry, you got to go in front of Michael Bisping. I don't know, but it's not fair to rank cards, you know? It's just a whole night besides for a moment. I don't know. It doesn't feel right to me. Next up, Sean Strickland making fun of Israel Adesanya. Golden moment in the UFC. Golden. It aged so well, too, because, of course, we all know the beatdown that Sean Strickland actually put on Israel Adesanya. It was great. Yeah, all right, Israel Adesanya, why don't you tell me what not to do? What not to do? I'm going to knock you out and do a TikTok dance over here, Greg. Oh, look at this grown man on TikTok. You know, it was hilarious. It was hilarious. Go get him, Alex. I loved it. And I still watch it every once in a while. So I feel like it's proper to put it with the Adesanya prayer, except I enjoyed this more than I enjoyed actually Adesanya getting finished. It was just something about him getting humiliated there was really funny to me. Next up, Rory McDonald versus Nate Diaz. This one's interesting because I've glazed Nate Diaz in this video. Him versus Conor McGregor is in the S tier. I have him somewhere else, Nate Diaz. Regardless, I like Nate Diaz. I don't like Nate Diaz anymore, but at the time, I've had a rocky road with Nate Diaz because I'm a big fan of Nick. I love Nick. Always loved watching him fight. Nate, I don't really like actually that much, but he's just had some of those moments. Does that make any sense? I hope it does. He needed a humbling, and he got a humbling from a guy in Rory McDonald that I was cheering for. I like Rory McDonald, big fan of Rory McDonald. This was bad. Getting suplexed, getting tossed around, getting absolutely destroyed. Nate Diaz needed this, so it was one of those satisfying performances, you know? I enjoyed watching it. But this is a C tier. Honestly, guys, I'm going to throw this at the very bottom. very bottom of C tier. Lastly, the greatest female fight of all time, Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Weili Zhang. One of those fights we were all just going crazy again. It was nuts. Where am I going to throw this one? I don't think it's up in the A tier. This is a B tier. This is a B tier. Still one of my great, like a great moment. Oh my god, I just realized my face cam's covering more. Oh, I'm sorry about that, guys. I didn't understand. I didn't notice that. But anyways, the last placement is going to go into the B tier. I'm going to put this one actually, it's a really good fight, but I'm going to throw it at the bottom of B tier. I just didn't care about it nearly that much. But guys, that is going to do it for all of my favorite moments in UFC history. Of course, again, I'm sure there's some I missed. Like in the middle of the video, I thought of Darren Till and Hamza Chimaev sitting on the cage. That was really cool to see. Other than that, I think I have a pretty good list here. I'm very happy with the tough placements of SS tier. But guys, let me know if any of these moments would be on the list for you as well. I would love to hear from you in the comment section, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. We do have other tier list content if you want to check that out. On the screen right now, though, if you'd like to continue watching the Clenbat channel, there'll be 2 videos on screen for you to check out. I will see you either there or in the next video, everybody. Take care.